Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Adrian Fort.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we're here for part 4 of a 6-part series. Is that what this is? Part 5 of it?
Part 5 of a 7-part series.
Oh, okay.
My God. Follow
It's
along,
hard to keep
man.
track, man.
You're 5 weeks into this. Get it right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
What
part
happened?
5 of a 7-part series.
Oh, you didn't say you're Dalton.
I am Dalton Gentry of the Hunger Games Suzanne Collins BookTube breakdown. Katniss finds Peeta camouflaged near a stream and tries to nurse him back to health.
Glad you're taking this so seriously.
You're welcome. She basically creates a faux reality TV romance in exchange for gifts to keep Peeta alive. Then the feast is announced, where there will be medicine for Peeta. There will be something for each contestant that they dearly need. And she narrowly escapes with some help from Thresh, who kills the attacker. And then she and Peeta kindle a weird romance and prepare for what is to come. Not a lot of forward action in this one, as we've been used to with the Hunger Games, but a lot going on. Adrian, where do you want to start?
Is it just me, or back here on 252, 253, Peeta smiles. Yes, Frosting. The final defense of the dying. You're not going to die, I tell him firmly. Says who? He says with a ragged voice. Says me. We're on the same time now. We're on the same team now, you know. I tell him. His eyes open. So I heard. You found... Now, nice of you to find what's left of me. I pull out my water bottle and give him a drink. Did Cato cut you, I ask? Left leg, up high, he answers. Is it just me? Or is... Oh, and then he tells her, well, don't step on me before she finds him. Is it just me, or is Peeta way funnier when he's dying?
Well, that's fair.
You know?
Well, I mean, I guess when faced with death, you kind of just, give up on your social anxieties. Might as well just sling a joke out here. That's about all you can do right now, Peeta. But yeah, I'll give you that one. Maybe Peeta should die more often.
Yeah.
So we've got some weird reality TV stuff going on here, which I think is good. It's well done. But this whole idea of kisses in exchange for gifts from Hey Mitch is very reality TV.
Do you mind if we get to that last?
Let's get to that last then.
Because I think that's going to be the meat of this discussion.
Okay.
So I think that it's obvious at this point. I think it was obvious when it very first happened, or very early in this chapter, this section, I should say. She's being hamstrung with Peeta. She's not being given the ability to excel with Peeta as a partner.
Okay.
She's being hamstrung with the guy that's injured, the guy that's dying.
Okay.
This is her weakness. This is going to be her weakness versus being a strength in numbers.
I agree wholeheartedly. That's actually one of my points. From a survivalist aspect, it is in her best interest, honestly, just to kill Peeta off at this point.
Yeah.
He's not contributing anything to this team. He's slowing her down for days, and there's no benefit to be gained. Kill him off.
But is there?
What is there? Beyond the gifts that she gets from the magic skybox.
Well, beyond that, you're looking at... This is one of those things that often happen... One of those things that often plays out in the business world. When you're doing computations for how long a job should take.
Okay.
You're not taking into account the human element.
Okay.
It is a very human element thing that even though you're being hamstrung with a guy who can't do anything and you have to watch out for, you get another person there.
Fair.
And you get to play off of each other versus being on your own and having to look at things in solitude. And what that does to a person. The company I work with now is notorious for having very few people there, right? Well, you only need X man hours to do Y labor, right?
Okay.
But do you? Because people wear down.
This is fair.
And some people get recharged from other people.
That's a fair statement. So there is an idea that either one of them could recharge off the other, mainly Katniss recharging off the company of Peeta. However, I'm going to stick to that. It is in her best interest to just kill him off.
I think that is very much what the games makers are going for as well. And what it reminds me of is sort of like March Madness.
Okay.
Right? Everyone loves an underdog story until the final four.
Okay.
You want the blue blood to win. This recent final four was a bunch of underdogs, and it didn't go over very well. No one watched.
Okay.
Because everyone wants to see the kids from District 1 and District 2 kill each other.
Here's...
No one wants to see the kid from District 12 win.
Here's the thing, though, and Katniss has become very aware at this point that she has to play her part in order to get these gifts. Obviously, this idea of these star-crossed lovers is going over quite well in the capital, and obviously she's pandering to that with all the kisses for gift. We're going to get back to that later. However, you tell me right now, if she knocks an arrow and fires it right into Peeta's head and offs him and goes about her day, she does not become a fan favorite. That's the heel turn this show needed.
She becomes a fan favorite everywhere except where she has to go back to live.
Well, that's fair. Nobody likes her there, but she did what she had to do. You can justify that. But that is the wrestling heel turn that she needed. She'd go from babyface to heel, and man, the fire would be behind her. Those gifts would be coming in left and right.
That Sting coming down from the rafters and taking off his shirt to reveal an NWO shirt.
This is true.
Right.
This is true. However, we don't get that, although that would be a lovely element. We get days worth of her caring for Peeta. And what began as a weird reality TV romance is starting to kindle into something more.
Again, let's push that off because I think there is the grand conversation here.
Okay.
Is towards that.
Okay.
So basically, the only other things I have to talk about here before we get into that are Foxface hiding under the cornucopia. Did you ever play Ghost in the Graveyard as a kid?
I did not. I'm familiar, though.
I was the kid that hid under the base. The minute the guy said 10, Ghost in the Graveyard, I popped my hand up and I was safe.
There you go.
Takes a lot of the fun away from the game, though. I called Thresh making a big save the day kill, didn't I?
You did.
I did.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Is that believable?
Is it on what level?
Can we say that is a believable moment for what's going on in this novel? That Thresh, who is a monster of a man, shows up, grabs the girl, bashes her head in with a rock, and then says, you know what? You did good, kid. I'm going to let you go this time. Is that believable? Absolutely not.
I don't know why not.
When we have maybe 3-4 contenders left in this fight, Thresh is now alone, and he knows for a fact that Katniss has a partner. He doesn't know what's happened to Peeta. We're assuming that he doesn't know what's happened to Peeta. No, it's in his best interest to just take that rock right over and crush her too. Whether she did good by Rue or not.
Thresh also does not, has not, and never has seemed all that invested in the games, has he?
Okay.
Even when it was time to display his powers, we get the understanding that basically he just showed up and people were like, Jesus Christ, give him a 9, or whatever it was. Yeah. So I am not sure. Both of the contestants, the warriors from his district, seemed to be more invested in people than the games, right?
Okay.
He seems very much of the mind, I don't like the fact that I'm here.
That's fair, but when we are down to, at this point, he knows just maybe 3 or 4 other contenders, that primal instinct kicks in, baby. At that point, whether you just don't want to be there or not, you're going to do what you got to do to get out of here.
He killed the shit out of Clove, didn't he?
In a heartbeat.
Yeah. So I think that his big deal is looking for the other guy.
You think so?
I think so.
It just really felt to me, this was one of the first moments in this novel where I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, so she gets a free pass because she's the protagonist. It was very ham-fisted.
She got a free pass because she helped out the little girl from his district.
Good for her. She's still a competitor. She's going to kill you later. Kill her now while she's down.
But she doesn't kill him, and she doesn't. So he doesn't know that she's just scared to all hell, right? And that's why she doesn't go for her bow and arrow. But she never made an aggressive move towards him either. I think that yeah, you've got a case. I'm not saying you're absolutely wrong.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I think that there is something to be had there. I think that it is a humanizing moment.
It is a humanizing moment. It just doesn't seem to work for me. But anyway, moving on.
In that kill, she notes the rapid rise and fall of Clove's chest. Have you ever seen someone absolutely obliterated, but still alive?
Yes.
That is a prime observation.
It is. It's a good observation.
That once your body goes on to sort of autopilot.
Survivalist autopilot.
Yeah. Your breathing goes. The one time that comes to mind most for me was the early days of MMA. Johnny Morton, a former wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, stepped into the ring, got knocked out cold, and started snoring in the middle of the ring. It was just the most insane thing I've ever seen from MMA. So that's just a memory I've got.
That's fair. It's a good point here, and this also goes back to Suzanne Collins is a skilled writer. She's doing good things here. It's a great observation.
Yeah. And with Thresh, later, Katniss says to Peeta, nobody wanted to track Thresh down in that grass.
Snake in the tall grass.
Lion in the tall grass.
Oh, was it lion in the tall grass?
Lion in the tall grass.
Excuse me. Anyway.
So yeah, I think that there's something going on there as well. Another thing, they're in a cave. What is the symbolism of the cave?
Go on.
So obviously it can go back to Plato, right, with the symbol of what is real life, but also humanity came from the caves, right? But have you ever heard of Göbekli Tepe?
I have not.
There is a great wave of people watching this right now who are looking at me through bro science goggles for mentioning Göbekli Tepe. But when you're talking about human civilization, in your view, how far back does it go? When you're thinking about as far back as it goes, where does it go?
I couldn't put a number on it. I don't know.
A few thousand years BC, right?
Sure.
3,000, 4,000 BC, maybe somewhere in there.
Sure.
Göbekli Tepe is from 9,000 BC.
Okay.
It is just being unearthed, and it is a civilization that was buried. The people of Göbekli Tepe filled it in with rocks. And Göbekli Tepe actually means something like the pot-bellied hill. People who live in this area always thought it was just a pot-bellied hill.
Okay.
But people 9,000 years ago filled it in and left. So this has led to a great amount of questions, right? What are we doing here? And there's fringe scientists who suggest that human civilization goes back way further than we ever knew, which when you're thinking about it kind of makes sense, because for 150 to 250,000 years, we've been walking around with the same noggins. Hypothetically, it's been the same gray matter inside. So you have to believe that people for 200,000 years, we'll call it even in the middle, were doing something besides or before the last 7,000 years or so of history.
That's fair.
So there is evidence to suggest that humanity was pushed into caves by a great disaster, including solar flares, which caused storms that was basically just constant lightning. That made there's places where so much rock is made over into glass because it was struck and struck and struck and struck. So the only reason they think that these scientists think that people would have lived in the caves, despite the fact that we're walking around with our brains and they very easily could have built structures, is because you weren't getting struck by that lightning in caves.
Interesting.
Yeah, and when you look back at cave paintings and things, they go way back, right?
Yeah.
So why were they living in the caves? So it, just a small thing there, not really connected to the text, but we are pointing to something primitive by living in a cave.
Okay. And there's a lot of stuff going on with the primitive in this and the primal nature of human beings. So
Yeah.
I think a good throwback to cave dwelling it would be appropriate. Absolutely.
So if we're going to get into this idea of the romance, I wrote down the ruse of romance.
The ruse of romance.
I think we can start on page 256. There's something to be made from this quote. I've left on Peta's undershorts because they're not in bad shape and I don't want to pull them over the swollen thigh. And, all right, maybe the idea of him being naked makes me uncomfortable. That's another thing about Mother and Prim. Nakedness has no effect on them, gives them no cause for embarrassment. Prim is prepubescent.
Okay.
Mother is postpubescent.
Okay.
We're talking about someone here in the throes of puberty.
This is fair.
Someone who would be uncomfortable with sexuality for reasons that are obvious.
Yeah.
Right? But we don't... Katniss is an interesting character through that scope.
Okay.
When we look at the other YA or children's series we've looked at on this channel, we'll take Harry Potter, for example. Harry Potter knows immediately he's attracted to Cho.
Yes.
Right? With Hermione and Ron, that romance builds over time.
Okay.
Despite the fact they hated each other. Katniss isn't buying into this at all and doesn't really seem invested in sexuality very much at all, does she?
It's fair. I'd say no.
She gets a bit of a sexual charge at the end.
Starts talking about Gale, correct?
Well, she's talking about Gale, but she's kissing Peta.
Yes.
And she says this is something about it being, I don't think I marked it, the first time that
It felt real.
it felt right, something like that. But I think that it's very tempting to look at Katniss in this text and say that she's asexual,
Okay.
or to say that she's homosexual,
Okay.
because she's thrust into these situations with Gale, for example. She has a very close relationship with Gale. Never mentions anything romantic. Never mentions anything sexually romantic, right?
Okay.
She mentions the idea of running away with him. There's never any romance there. There's never any attraction there.
Okay.
She's in this situation with Peta, who's begging her for a kiss, who's outright begging her for some type of sexual show, right? Sexual showing, not sexual show. Perhaps that's different.
Slightly.
Yeah. And she doesn't, it's not that she's repulsed by it. She doesn't understand.
Okay.
Am I being unfair there?
Well, this is
I'm not making the argument that she is asexual.
No.
I'm saying that I think that it's a very tempting argument to make.
Well, this is where Collins is really flexing her chops on this one here. Because while Katniss goes for the kiss with Peta and continues, Katniss is doing it for survival. Because kiss means care package. And the bigger this romance is played up, the more money they're going to spend, baby. The more they're going to send us, and we're going to get through this. So Katniss is doing this very much so for gain, for profit. This is a weird, almost prostitution-like thing where if I kiss this man, I will profit from it. It begins that way. But towards the end of this, once we start getting that first real kiss, she's starting to develop a feeling for Peta. We never get Peta's perspective on this. We just get what is told to us as the reader. We don't know if this is Peta's big plan with Haymitch to capitalize off this. We don't know if this is genuine. We are led to believe it is genuine from Peta, but we have no concrete evidence to do so. And I think that's where Collins is very successful in this. Both characters here are playing this game, and we never know for sure how the other one is going.
Right, but we have more reason to believe that Peta is being genuine because he has all these memories.
It does feel very genuine to us, yes.
So let me offer you this. This idea of Katniss as asexual,
Okay.
trying to survive the games. How often do you hear from someone you know that is asexual or is homosexual, that adolescence and the time of puberty was way more stultifying for them than it was for us?
Fair.
Because the minute I hit puberty, I was looking for girls to kiss on, right? Many boys were that way, many girls were that way, who were heterosexual. Many people who were asexual or who were homosexual didn't have that. So we did it because we knew this is what heterosexual people do, right? Okay. Part of that was in the priming. Without that priming, to know that what, so the assumption is that you're heterosexual. That's what society assumes about someone.
Okay.
When the assumption is there from other people that you are heterosexual, I think it's very often when you're getting into this territory, easy to assume that about yourself. How often is the term used around someone who has come out as homosexual that they were the last to know?
Okay.
That's a very common phrase, right? He was the last to know. Everyone knew. When he was coming out, everyone knew but him that everyone knew.
Well, there's a lot of social stigma behind it, especially in
exactly.
adolescence, especially when it's different from the norm that you're being presented in your society. Especially your societal group, the area you're in, especially like looking at the Midwest, for example, it's a difficult time. So yeah, I get you. I get where you're going with this.
So what we're doing with the book here is we're using the games as societal assumption.
Okay.
Onto Katniss, who does not seem to share this romantic tingling. So in the book, we are having the assumptions put on us that we should be romantic with Peeta. We don't feel that romance, but to get by, to pass, to fit in, to be accepted, to survive, we are delving into that romance.
Interesting.
How many people do you know that are homosexual or that are asexual have been in heterosexual relationships?
It's a fair amount.
Because it is something that is assumed onto them by society, so they try it, not knowing, right? Not knowing otherwise.
Interesting point. I delved into more of the audience perspective on this, the reality TV, because this is straight up reality TV. If you put two people together in this is a Big Brother TV show. If you put two people together, there's obviously going to be a sexual tension, and that is what the audience is craving. I think your point adds brilliantly to it, because Katniss continues to feel uncomfortable in this. But she's definitely doing so as a survivalist mechanism. She is appeasing the audience, the society she is within at this point, to survive, to get by. And that's an interesting point to bring up.
It's a hell of a metaphor, isn't it?
It really is. It is. Especially for a YA text, as we mentioned.
Especially when we're looking at the Hunger Games as a metaphor for puberty in general.
Okay.
As a metaphor for sexual awakening. How early in your sexuality, didn't those urges feel just like when you're ravenously hungry? You could not control those urges, right? Okay. You couldn't tell those feelings, shut up for a minute, will you? I got work to do.
Okay.
You were hungry. How often, what's the popular phrase today? Oh, she's so thirsty, right?
Hungry.
Because those feelings feel interchangeable. How often is sexuality substituted for food in movies, right? Someone being very sexual, they're eating an apple, they're eating grapes, they're eating this, they're eating that, right? Not just movies, but art in general. That's where a lot of times food goes, is down the sexual road. And when you go back to Genesis, for example, you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it becomes, well, now I got to put clothes on because I didn't know we were being naked.
Interestingly enough, at this point, she is quite literally using this idea of sexuality in order to feed herself. It is necessitated. So, interesting. I'm about this.
I think that it's just, I think there's something there. I think that is an idea worth looking at.
I agree.
And I am not saying that she is an asexual character. I'm not saying that she is a homosexual character. I'm saying that I think it's obvious we're being led down that road, right, to at least consider. And when we're looking at the feeling she has for Gale never come across as romantic, do they?
They don't, no.
Do they ever come across as sexual?
They do not.
She never talks about how wide his shoulders are and how puffy his lips are, right? I don't know what girls look at. I'm just saying, okay? Don't give me that.
Wide shoulders and puffy lips?
I don't know.
That's an attractive man.
But we're never told about that.
Okay.
And we're never told about the way he makes me feel, other than he has equipped her, right?
He's a good companion.
And she has equipped him, right? This relationship they have is they make each other better and more useful.
Okay. Was that symbiotic?
Yeah, this is symbiotic. That's what symbiotic means. I wonder if, so another gender bending idea that we've talked about before is the fact that she has been thrust into the father role. So she has had her femininity stripped away from her by necessity, by circumstance. So there is that element of things as well. And if you were to remove your readership from the text and just look at things, she's butch, right? She's the hunter. She's never shaved her legs. She's hanging out with fellas, right? So there's all of those things at play as well.
Interesting.
Is that fair?
That's fair. She definitely would be considered a more masculine character than anything, for sure.
Masculine or masculinized?
Let's go with masculinized. That's a good way to put it.
Because we see sexually the character of Katniss when she's all primmed up, right? When she's primped and she's proper. We see her as she must be a very attractive person because people keep commenting on it.
Yeah.
So is this a case of someone who has had their sexuality sort of beaten out of them by circumstance?
It's possible. I mean, granted, in the environment she lived in, there's not a lot of time to look nice and pretty and proper and, go out and try to find an attractive mate and go on these lovely dates, because honestly, if you don't get out there and hunt, you're going to die. So is your whole family.
And when you're looking for a mate, are you looking for attractive or are you looking for useful?
If you can't be attractive, you might as well be handy. Can't be handsome, you might as well be handy. I think that's the phrase I was looking at.
Where
there.
did you get that?
I don't know. I am the living embodiment of not that.
Be good or be good at it, right?
Exactly. So that's. Do we have anything else we really want to hit here?
No, I can end there.
We're running really short on time here, so we will be back next week with the last bit of the reading for the Hunger Games. This should be chapter 23, I believe, until the conclusion.
Through the conclusion, yeah.
23 to the end of Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games. And if you like this kind of thing, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Give this video a like as well for some good quality content and good quality discussion on Suzanne Collins. And if you want to help us create more great content like this here on Strip Cover Lit, there's a link as always to our Patreon to be found in the description below.